Hey, friend. Welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away, your podcast all around knitting for stress relief. Today, I am super excited to talk to a personal favorite designer in the knitting industry of mine. This is such a fun interview that we did together, and her name is Chantal Miyagishima from Knitatude. If you've ever come across her on her Instagram, you probably know her for her purple hair, her unapologetically fun vibes, sometimes curse words, and beginner-friendly knitting patterns that actually fit. Chantal is passionate about slow fashion, body inclusivity, and making things with your hands that help you feel empowered and not stressed. And honestly, that is exactly what this podcast is all about, right? Her first book, called Sweater Success, is actually coming out this fall, and we are in this interview diving into all things design, creativity, and how she built a knitting business that totally lights her up. I'm so excited for you to listen to our conversation that we had just a few weeks ago. Let's get started. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away, the podcast for overwhelmed moms who are done with doom scrolling and ready for something slower. Hi, I am Nadine. I am a mom, a knitting coach for beginners, and proud screen time dropout who believes that peace starts with just one stitch. If you've ever craved a quiet moment to yourself, this show is your cozy permission slip. Let's trade notifications for needles and turn stress into self-care together. All right, welcome, Chantal, to the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. I'm so excited that you're joining us today, all the way from Canada. I'm here in the US on the East Coast. We're not super far apart, but I guess a little. So,
yeah, a little. It's fine.
We're in the same time zone, though, so that's something, right? All right, so we're here today to talk about all sorts of awesome things about your craft business, your knitting business, crochet too, actually. Do you?
No, I don't crochet a lick. Maybe one day, but not yet.
But you know how to do it.
I know how to do a single crochet and a double crochet and a shell stitch, but that is literally it. And if you asked me to do it, like, gun to my head right now, I would not know how.
That's so funny. I know there's a lot of crafters who have like both, in their pocket, but I'm definitely also more on the knitter side here myself. But yeah, so your business is called Knitatude, and I'm pretty sure a lot of my listeners already know who you are and about your business, but I feel like I want to take them just a tad more behind the scenes of what you are all about. And of course, your book is coming out in November called Sweater Success, which is so exciting.
And
congratulations.
There's a really long title right after it, which I still haven't completely
I have it written down because otherwise I would not get that right.
Yeah, from cast on to closet, how to learn how to fearlessly knit your first cardigan or pullover. It's a mouthful.
But hey, it's what it is, and we need to know about it, right? So I would love to start sort of at the beginning, though, which I always ask everybody who's coming here on the podcast. How did you first fall in love with knitting? Why did you start? How did you start? Who taught you? And then what inspired you to turn it into now a full-time business?
Yeah, I started knitting back in probably 2012. I feel like Pinterest was like this massive craze, and I was 22 at that point. And I just remember like seeing every single like super cute blonde long hair extensions wearing like a circle scarf. And I was like, I would like one of those. And I remember asking for one for Christmas from my mom, from my in-laws, like everything. And I did not get one. So I decided to learn how to knit by literally going to YouTube. My first like ever scarf was supposed to be a 1x1 rib scarf. But like, I feel like I was one of those people that I was like, okay, I'm supposed to knit one. Okay. Pearl one. Okay, I can't remember which one that one is. So I would literally, like I had Cheerios, like 2 Cheerios on my right-hand side. And when I knit, I would move the Cheerio over to my left. And when I purled, I would move the Cheerio over to my left. And
you know what? I've never heard that trick, but that is brilliant.
I can tell you it did not work because then I would eat the Cheerio and then I would have no idea which one I was on. And my first scarf turned out to be a garter stitch scarf. And it is probably, I would say, 20 to 22 inches across. It's huge. And it's really long because I didn't know how long I was supposed to make it. So it feels like a Lenny Kravitz scarf. Like trying to wear it feels like I'm wearing like an armored blanket.
Which can be, I guess it can be beneficial in your area. I'm assuming it gets pretty chilly up there.
Yeah, I'm in Canada, so it's freezing pretty often. But yeah, that's how I learned how to knit,
That is
just by
super
going
funny.
off of YouTube. And then
Yeah.
I started making like other scarves for myself. And then I had a bunch of girlfriends that were like, "Oh my goodness, that's super cute. Like, would you like make me one?" And I was like, "I will, but these take forever, so I'll charge you for it." And like, I think at that point, I was like spending like 9 hours on a scarf, and I was charging like $35.
Oh, no.
And at that point, like, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I super enjoy it. It took me an entire year to learn how to do a purl. So I just did garter stitch scarves forever. And I literally started Knitatude before I even learned how to purl. So it was just like one of those things that I just kind of enjoyed. And then it just grew and grew. And then I sold physical items from, I think I opened up Knitatude in 2014. And then I sold physical items all the way into 2017. But I didn't write my first pattern until 2016 in the fall. And then all of a sudden it was like a game changer. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't like get an Etsy like cha-ching and it doesn't freak me out. And I just...
Because you have to make the garment.
Yeah,
That takes
because
forever.
as soon as you get that sale, you're like, oh, great.
Oh,
But
no.
with like a digital pattern, it was like, oh, I've like already done the work up front and now I just have to answer emails, which was... It like helped Knitatude not bottleneck is the easiest way to put it.
Well, if you're by yourself and you're running the business and you have to make everything and fulfill everything like on the other end, right? Like there's a whole rat's tail. And if you're wearing all the hats, that can get a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Well, and then of course, handmade items, especially knitting. I feel like it's a little different than like, I don't know, like sewing or something, which is probably a little quicker. But this does take a long time unless you do it all day, right?
It's so labor intensive. And I also think that it's just like, it's so sad that like, I feel like there's a stigma around knitting and crocheting where it's like, oh, it's like an old person hobby, or like you're going to just like do it in your free time anyways. So you might as well just like sell it for $10. And there's just this really, really low and cheap expectation. And like to make people, the curve to get people to understand how expensive it is and that it's like handcrafted and every stitch is literally made by a person's hand. It's so hard to sell physical items because you're like, okay, well, here's this hat and by industry standard it's like $75 and they're like, but it's a hand knit hat, why isn't it 10? So it's like that
because it's not from Target and it doesn't come out of a machine.
Exactly.
So true.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, and I completely understand that. And I have had people tell me or ask me like, hey, don't you want to sell the things that you make? And I'm selfish. I'm like, no, that's for me. Like I made that for myself. I just love it. But I probably also don't want to make the same thing 10 times because I'll get really bored.
And it's also like the only way that you can kind of make money is like knitting with like size 6 super bulky and really thick needles. And like after a certain point, it's like you're not doing like intensive like patterns that are really making you think. And it's a lot for your wrists to also handle like that kind of weight constantly on your needles and constantly on your wrists.
That makes so much sense that you pivoted there and you still knit because you design it. So you're still making, right? And I'm guessing you're probably still making things for yourself. And I just saw you actually making a new one for your husband too, which I think is so cool. I actually still have one of your patterns that I need to make for my husband, but I always fall back into, no, I need something else for myself first. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It's one of the reasons where I was like, every single fall, I will make Todd an item. One thing, because I'm like, the rest of it is mine.
Yeah, there you go. See? But I think that's great that you then turned it so quickly into a designing business. That is fantastic. I've knitted with a long break in between for almost my entire life. And I couldn't even begin thinking about making my own design, which is why I'm so excited about your book. This is going to be fabulous because
I'm excited. Well, I found that it was like, I was never good. It's funny, like, and ironic that I now am like a full-time knitwear designer, being that like, I could not read patterns when I first started because I found like they were so confusing. I'm like, this is like an entire new language. And like, I would look at a pattern and look like
totally is.
I'm like, this looks like Klingon. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, and I think that because I was constantly making up my own like stitch patterns in my head for the
Yeah.
items that were in my booth, it was like, oh, I remember having a girlfriend that she was like, oh, you know that you can like sell it like a recipe. And I was like,
Yeah.
huh?
I wouldn't even know how to translate.
Really?
But that probably, you know what? Honestly, I think that helped you because if you didn't really follow a pattern and you started making up your own stuff, that's how you start designing, right? And I am like a
Yeah.
total, I wouldn't call myself a rule follower, but when it comes to instructions for like, I don't know, like IKEA furniture, I'm like, no, 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 I need the instruction. Like, I need to read this because I'm going to do it wrong. And that's how I've always knitted. So it's always been follow the pattern and even modifying. I'm very like intimidated by it, but I'm
No,
venturing,
but patterns are meant to be blueprints. You're allowed to
yeah,
change them to be able to fit your body. And I will say that I think that because I was so hesitant at reading patterns when I first started, that it actually makes my writing style really beginner friendly. Because, like, to me,
yeah,
my biggest issue was like when I would read a pattern, I would think that I knew better, and I'd be like, "Well, I'm not doing XYZ," and then all of a sudden, I'd be like, "Oh my god, you just majorly messed this up. Now you have to go back to it." So now in like all of my patterns, I'm like, "You're about to do XYZ, and this is why you're doing it this way. So do not deviate from the pattern. Like, this is why you're
I
doing it."
love it. I love that. I think that's really important. I have a lot of people who are getting back into knitting that are
Mhm.
listening and a lot of beginners. So for them, I
Yeah.
think it's important to number one, not be intimidated by the pattern itself,
Yeah.
right? And then also, I love that you explain why you're doing something in there because I feel like that takes that whole like, oh my God, like I just want to skip that because it sounds really hard. But then the whole like, just dive in and try it because you can always do it again. But if you're
Yeah.
explaining why you're doing it and not to skip it or, for whatever reason,
It
I
and I think
think
it makes it like
that's great.
I think it makes it break down as well, where you're like, "Oh, now I understand why that construction is in that specific way. Okay,
Yes.
now I understand why I'm picking up that many stitches because otherwise it's not gonna fit, like, a specific way." And I
Mhm.
think that just having that, like, extra I don't know, it just kinda, like, holds your hand and makes you go, "Okay, I am learning the entire process." That's not just, like, I'm following something step by step by step, but I'm
But I
understanding
don't know
why I'm
why.
doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it
Great.
also makes you, like, not second guess the pattern and it makes you do it because I don't know. I'm one of those people that I'm like, "That's nice. I'm gonna do it my way." And then I'm like, "Yeah."
Like, oh crap, why did I do that? Like I think so. One thing I wrote down here from what you said is like you did not know how to do a purl stitch and you started already a knitting
Selling.
business. I love that you mentioned that. I feel like that's so great because I have so many people who are like, I don't know how you do that. I could never, I could never. And I'm like, no, you absolutely could. And if you know how to do one single stitch, you can make everything you want, right? I mean,
Oh,
you can make
yeah.
anything in garter stitch. So
I can tell you,
I'm
I'm 11
so
years.
glad you said that. Like you
Yeah.
actually started a business and you made stuff that people
Well,
pay
and
you for, and you only knew one stitch. Fantastic.
but I
Like
also think
I
it's like
love it.
people, like, have this idea that they're like, "Oh, I have to be perfect at something to be able before I start doing it." And I'm like, I can tell you
No.
right now, I'm 11 years into doing Knitatude. This is the first time that I am doing YouTube, like, for, like, something that I'm focusing on, and I'm like, "Ha, this is all new." I'm
Yeah.
like, you are constantly learning, so it's like if you're
Absolutely love
holding
it.
yourself back just because you don't know everything, I can promise you, you are not going to know everything all the
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I think my last episode that I recorded was partially about that, where it's like, don't let that derail you before you even begin because you
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm not going to know that perfectly. Like it's so important that we keep reiterating that. And I'm so
Dude.
glad you mentioned that. And then, of course, for anybody who agrees with the knitting patterns looking like it's Klingon, I'm, I'm right there with you. And I have a download that has a glossary attached to it so that there's a little bit less of a language barrier. So anybody who's listening, you can download that. I put that link in the show notes because it's very helpful. I remember. So for me, I learned it all in German because I'm from Germany.
Yeah.
And then I came here and in 2020, I picked knitting up again after, I don't know, like at least a 20-year break.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I was removed from it and I didn't know the words in English. And I looked at the patterns the same way you did. And I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell?
So, like, there's a
It's
difference
like,
between, like, US version, like, US terms and UK terms, so it depends on where
yeah.
you live in the, like,
Oh
in
yeah.
the world.
It's wild. It's already like you already have to translate it from English to knitting.
Yeah.
But now I was like going from German to English to knitting and I was like,
You're
nope, this is not working
multilingual
for
at
me.
that point.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Knitting is definitely one of our languages. So yeah, I created that because I was like, this would have been so helpful for me. So your patterns, are they mostly beginner friendly or are they for people who know how to knit?
Uh,
Like,
so
and what would you say?
So I would say that like a lot of my patterns are like really good for an advanced knitter who has known how to knit in the round. They've done a hat, they've done a scarf, and they want to be able to take on their first garment.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that they're really, really helpful for anyone who's looking for like a really mindless knit where they're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm doing like a bunch of like lace projects or whichever. And now I just need something where I can kind of turn my brain
Yeah.
off. Like I have a tendency that I love stockinette in the round while some people may hate that. And like that's the majority of my patterns. I do like to always think of my patterns as like you are going to have some mindless knits and then you're going to have to focus for like 30 minutes.
A
And
little
then
way.
you're going to
Yeah.
have some more mindless knits and then you're going to have to focus for another 10 minutes. So it's like on like a few rows. So I would say my stuff is like pretty beginner friendly, but it's really graded well and it's also kind of perfect for like a Netflix and chill cuz
Yes.
we all need like one
Speak
of
in my
those.
language.
Yeah,
Speak
we
in
need
my
some of those,
language.
like,
Yeah.
mindless projects, especially with what's going on in the world. Like
Oh, 100%. I so appreciate that because I always talk about mindless projects and having multiple ones on your needles in case you do
yeah,
have, like you said, a lace one and you're like, okay, I need my full attention on that. But I'm a mom of three. They're all home all day long.
yeah,
A lot of my listeners are moms and they're like, we don't even know when to work this in. So if the
yeah,
pattern, the more mindless, the better, in my opinion. But I also would like to say that it doesn't, the pieces that you're creating from your patterns, they all look so special and so unique. So it's not just like, oh, it's a mindless knit, so it looks boring or whatever. Like it's not at all like that. There's like so much
yeah, it's
uniqueness,
just class.
designed into it so that you have like these little design elements in there that for example this I'm actually want to make that one and I don't remember the name. It's like a lace, it has lace at the bottom but it's a
Ooh,
tank. It
that
just
one is
came out.
yeah, it's called the Little Lace Crop,
That's the one.
and I feel
And
you.
that lace part, I know I'm going to have to pay attention to that, but everything
Yeah,
else is going to be, the whole body is going to be the
and
mindless
I
part
just,
and
like
I'm excited.
I like making patterns where it's like every single time that like to me I view myself as like kind of a stepping stone. Like I am not the be end like end goal designer that you're going to use. You're going to learn how to be able to make a garment from my patterns. You're going to
Hmm.
understand the construction. You're going to use that as a stepping stone to then get into color work at another designer. You're going to then use my designs as like a stepping stone towards doing like lace work, etc. But I do like to also always add like a technique that you may not know, where it's like, okay, well, you're either learning a top-down construction. Okay, now on your next pattern, you're going to learn how to do your first I-cord like bind off, or you're going to learn how to do some more like shaping that is going to be over like a
Hmm.
2x2 rib. Like each one kind of has a little bit of like a detail in it, or whether it's like some really beginner friendly lace. Like it's like each thing should teach you and put you on the next stepping stone that you feel comfortable. You still feel like it's somewhat of a challenge, but then when you're like, okay, I have mastered this, like you go off, you go to another designer, which is what I want you to do. And then when you
Yeah.
need a mindless knit, you come back.
Love it. Love it so much. This is why you're here right here. Because I love, like, everyone has to go to knitatude.ca, right? That's the website. Check out her patterns. I mean, so lovely. And you come out with so many. Like, how many do you do per year? Do you know?
So I used to pump them out. I usually did on average like 12 to 20 in a year, but I have now in the last 2 years, I've put myself to 7. Because to
Okay.
me, I just feel like, I don't know, we have such like a slow fashion industry. And I think that especially during like COVID, it was like it ramped that up. And all of a sudden we kind of lost the idea like this is meant
Slow.
to be a slow craft. And I think that because I personally, like if I go onto like Ravelry or wherever, I feel like I get really overwhelmed about how many
Hmm.
patterns there are out there. So I was like, I don't really like, I would rather spend more time on making a pattern. And like, this is not to say that my other patterns, I didn't spend the time, but I feel like I like actually can really invest that time in a specific pattern and really market it the way that I want to, because I just find that like it is so easy to just be like, okay, well, I released a pattern this month. Well, on to the next one. And I'm like, but that one was so good. Why do I have to move on to the next one?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's so fantastic that you're mentioning the slow fashion aspect here, because I see a lot of people out there who are really fast knitters, but then when you are considering the fact that maybe that's literally all they do because they don't maybe work anymore, or maybe they don't have a lot of kids, or maybe for whatever reason they just have the time, which is fabulous. I mean, I would love to, right? But I have had many women come to me and say, I just don't even have the time for it, so I'm not even going to start. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You can do this in like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and you don't have to finish this like it's a race, or compare yourself to the others that are out there and maybe doing this really fast. And then I find myself doing this. I'm still finishing. I don't know. You probably saw the Storyteller rap by Alexi from, Two of Wands. I'm still not done with it. And I started it before the knit along even began, like 2 or 3 days before. And I'm still not. And I'm like, but I have made something else in the meantime. Or, like there's just so many things that I do at the same time. And I don't want to be under that pressure that I have to finish it when everyone else does, or when I should. So I want to take that pressure off for people, because it's it takes the fun out of it.
It's supposed to be a mindless, like it's supposed to be a slow craft. And like, I think that like with how society has kind of pushed us to be so like capitalistic. Sorry, that was probably my thing. Sorry. I feel like with society like pushing to be so capitalistic and like, what are you doing? What is the next thing that you're making? Like, I think that we have a craft that is so like it's supposed to be a time where you're not doing something else. It's supposed to be a time where you're like actually seeing your stitches. And I think that's a beautiful part about knitting and crocheting, is that you can literally like each row that you finish, you can see that productivity.
Yes.
You can see that like, you've added that one additional like row in height. And I think we just forget that it's like we came into this for a specific reason, because there is the feeling of making things with your hands and like seeing it come together is so much more special than literally going to a mall and just picking up a sweater at like H&M or a fast fashion brand. Like, it's like, I don't know, every single one of those stitches is like really monumental. And I think that we just like can forget that.
That's so true. That is so true. I'm so glad you said that. I really like, this is what this whole podcast is all about, is the reason we start this is because we want to take some stress out of our life. We don't want to add any by thinking, I need to knit as fast as the other person over there who may have done it for decades at this point, right? That's another thing. If you only know how to slowly knit your rows, there's so nothing wrong with that. In fact, enjoy, right? Like, enjoy the time. Like,
it's magic.
It really helps.
Big things with our hands. That's quite wild.
Yes. Like, I see so many people pick up knitting left and right now, and I have so many people downloading my little cheat sheet that I have for very super beginners. But and I'm just like, yes, please, more people take it up, because we need something to counterbalance the complete insanity that is happening in the world. So this is your craft right here. This is it. Okay, let's talk about the book. Okay. Sweater Success from Cast On to Closet. Learn to fearlessly knit pullovers and cardigans. Yeah, I'm here for that. Like, I need that. So can you give us a little behind the scenes peek and what we can expect from the book?
Yeah. So this book is like, I keep on having people being like, how many patterns are in it? And I'm like, that's not what this book is about. So first of all, there are 6 brand new patterns in it, but the entire book is essentially the process of all the things that you should know to be able to make your sweater a success. And like, I think that it is, sometimes we jump into making sweaters or garments or whatever it is without understanding like, what does blocking do? What is a gauge swatch? If my gauge swatch is supposed to be 16 and I'm getting 14, why do I have to stop and be like, no, I have to get 16? Because all of a sudden you're like, oh, that could be the difference of 4 inches in my finished item or 8. Essentially, the book takes you from start to finish of how to be able to like make your first sweater and make it well. Because I think we just, again, we can kind of rush into things and then we finish it and we're like, okay, that either was not exactly the most enjoyable experience. Or like I put it on and I'm like, I don't understand why this doesn't fit well. Like I've got a modifying chapter in the book as well to be able to
perfect.
How to make things work for your body. Because I don't know, along with like being like taking fast fashion and putting it back to slow fashion, to me, like, as I said before, a pattern is a blueprint, and the advantage is that we're literally making our own clothes. So why would we not make it fit our body? And
Totally.
that's another portion in the book. I don't know. I just wanted to be able to essentially like take it from when you cast on how to choose your materials, how to yarn set, all of those things to like the middle stages to how to be able to actually store your knits. Because I see so many people storing their knits incorrectly, and I'm like, oh my God, don't do that. You're warping your like sweater. Don't do it. You have
all that work.
Yeah. Like, and just to be able to make sure that these are supposed to be like heirloom projects. Like these should be lasting forever.
Yeah.
It's essentially the process from start to finish, which is cast on to closet. And
so it's essentially, is it encouraging us as the reader to like come up with our own design then? Or are you leading us through how your design process is, or how do I have to?
So it actually doesn't come into design at all. It's more along the lines of like how to be able to like knit a sweater, know all the basics that are behind it to make sure that you are actually making a sweater that like fits you well and like that turns out like the designer intended it to. Because I think there's so many times where it's like you can knit a sweater and then all of a sudden you look at it and you put it on your body and you're like, why does it not drape that way? And you're like, oh, it's because I used like a wool versus a cotton.
Yes.
Or like, why am I getting like, I feel like I have like wonky stitches in between, and it walks you through, oh, that's because you didn't block your piece. Or like, it essentially teaches you all the things to be able to make your like first sweater kind of a success in general, like walking you through like basic constructions. To be able to get an idea of like, what are the patterns that I'm looking for? Do I need to like maybe incorporate bust shaping? If I like, is bust shaping even something that is worthwhile for me? It's essentially to be able to walk you through the process of knitting your first sweater and making it actually work.
I love it. And it's so funny that you said that about it being too big or too small. Like I made a sweater, gosh, this was probably back in 2020, maybe 21. So I had just started again to kind of dabble with it. And I used the exact needle that was in the pattern. I used the exact yarn that was in the pattern. So I was like, I don't need to gauge this. I got this one. And I ended up putting it in the donation pile because I also was not going to open the whole thing up again. I was too lazy for that, but I was majorly upset because I was so excited about that one. And it completely, I mean, it was just such a disaster. And I'm like, yeah, this is why you wrote that book. Like, this is for people like me.
It was all the things that I like wanted to know. Like, I think it was the idea of like, so whether it's like you have never knit your first sweater in general, and you're like, okay, what are the steps and processes that I need to take to be able to knit my first sweater? Or if it's a person that's like knit multiple sweaters and being like, wow, none of these fit how I want them to, or like none of them turned out how I wanted them to. It's like, oh, let's go back to the basics to remind ourselves of like, every step that is included in making a sweater and why they're so important.
Yeah. Love it. That's awesome. So tell us, when does the book come out?
Oh, the book comes out officially November 4th, 2025. It's 2025. Okay. It was originally supposed to come out
like 5-ish months?
I was like, what year is it?
4 to 5 months. Yep. Still a little bit to go, but we can pre-order it.
It took me an entire year to write. I had a publisher reach out to me in, I think, maybe May of 2024. And then we locked in a contract in like June. And then I went to the races and started writing and making all those patterns. And I will tell you that writing a book is so labor intensive. I was like, I'm like a writer by trade. Like I literally, like before I went full time with Knitatude, like I was a copywriter. Like I wrote ads, scripts. So like that was my job. So like to me, I was like, I can write anything in my sleep. I was like, this is just X amount of like blog posts. I can do that so quickly. And it murdered me.
Yeah. You know, I have anytime I have heard someone, and I have not written a book, but every time I heard a new author or someone who took like their expertise to a book,
Yeah.
it is literally the same thing. Everyone has said that, and I'm like, it is. I'm just majorly impressed. It's just so, yeah, like, because I don't know if I could do it. So I'm just looking at it and I'm like, and I just found out about your book. I don't know if you never shared about it or if I just
No, I
totally missed
literally
it.
just I finally was able to announce it just at like the
So you
very
didn't.
like end of May. Like I've
So
been
then
like
I
kind
did
of
hear
like
it when it first. Yes.
yeah, I've been kind of sneak peeking it. Like whenever I was doing
Yeah.
stories, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm just writing a few pages of coffee," or like if I need to do whispers, my book. Like it's like,
So little hints here or there. So I
yeah,
did. Okay. Then I did see and hear about it when you actually officially announced
yeah,
it, which was just a couple of weeks ago as we're
yeah,
recording this. And I was like, oh my God. Like I'm every single time I see somebody come out with a book about what they're doing, it is
yeah.
to me just it's a milestone. So really congratulations on that. Like it's just such a big deal.
Thanks.
And it's really, like you said, it's so very hard. And I've heard that so many times. So like congratulations again, like
Yeah.
to doing this and finishing it, and now it's ready and it's an actual book, right? Like
I
it's
know.
so
I
awesome.
still
So
haven't even got
awesome.
my first copy. Like literally, I just sent in my last edits because that's the other thing is that like technically the pre-orders start before the last edits are even finished. So I
Oh,
just gave my last like sign off on the book, and I'm praying that there's no errata. Like, I'm praying there's no errors. But yeah, it's like it's such a long
yeah.
process.
And
It's
what an interesting thing to learn about too, right? Because I'm sure you were new to that too, to the
yeah.
actual book writing process and
Oh
publishing and all
yeah.
that stuff. Like, yeah, that's and I know it's time consuming, but so yeah. Very excited for that to come out. Everybody can get their pre-orders in. We're going to share the link in the show notes if you want to share it here. I don't know. It's from an Amazon link, is it? If not, we'll
No, I've
just.
got one that goes to like everywhere. Like it's in Barnes and Noble. It's
Oh,
like in
oh,
like
perfect.
ebooks, like
Well,
everything.
do you want to share it real quick? I'm going to put it in the show notes as well if you like
Yeah,
to
I
share it
totally
here.
will.
Is it too long? Yeah.
Oh, it's like a blah, blah, blah.
It's real long. Okay. We're going to put it in the show notes. Everyone, get your book. Get your book. It's going to come in November. Okay.
Yeah, November 4th.
Um, So, last thing that I would actually like before we talk about where everyone can find you, but do you have a single project in mind that you created that you would think is perfect for someone who wants to have like a quick win or one of those like mindless projects, but more for someone who's either getting back into it or is relatively new to knitting, so they can finish something relatively quickly without it being like, oh, I'm knitting all day. But, stitching up during maybe nap time or at the end of a long day where you really can't focus that much, but you really do want to make something and you want to get back into it. What would you recommend? One of
Are you
yours?
saying garments or sewing?
Anything.
To
I
me,
don't know.
uh, I love my, like, if you're thinking garments, I love, love, love my easy eyelet yoke. And it's like a top down. It's a perfect sweater for that. If you've never done a top down knit,
Yeah.
do that. The increases, which are like the eyelets, are so speedy. And it's knit in a size 4 worsted, kind of an Aran weight. And I think 6mm needles off the top of my head. So it's like nice and quick and it's mindless and it's just something that you can do either while watching TV or like watching the kids, anything like that. So that would be my one suggestion. My second suggestion, even though it might take a little longer than a few days, is one of my sweater scarves, which like if
Oh,
it's
yes.
it's a scarf with
Pretty.
sleeves, and if you haven't seen it in action, it is the coolest item ever. It's essentially, yeah, a scarf with sleeves, but when you wear it, it becomes this like drapey, beautiful sweater type thing. It's
And
gorgeous.
you can reverse it, right? Like you can wear
Yeah.
the front on the back
You
and the
wear it
back on
like,
the front
I think,
and wear it as a scarf.
yeah, Courtney from Tinderbox, she literally did a YouTube video of like 10 different ways to be able to wear it.
Get
It's
out.
so
Oh,
versatile. It's
wow.
so cool.
That's amazing. All right, there you go. You're gonna make the eyelet sweater and one of the sweater scarves. I know there's multiple ones. I have
Yeah, I
looked
would
at
say the snowfall. Yeah,
snowfall. Okay.
snowfall sweater scarf.
Snowfall sweater scarf. We're going to put that also in the show notes because we need mindless projects that look beautiful and that we are going to be like, I made that.
Yeah.
Because that's the best part about it. The win that you didn't think you had in you. Like when I remember this in 2020, I was like, everyone is knitting and making sourdough bread. I'd rather knit. So I know how to do this, but I really don't remember a thing. So I started something, and I always joke about this. People on this podcast may already know this, but I made this huge, gigantic cardigan. It was We Are Knitters. And it was like it was all cotton. It was like 9 or 10 skeins of cotton. And I don't know what I was thinking. Not much. Because it was like months later, I was still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't recommend it. So yes, these two things are going to be a lot faster.
Also a We Are Knitters sweater. It was their classic sweater where it was like, 2 boxes, 2 rectangles.
Yes. Oh yeah. Super easy. And it was not that it wasn't simple. It was garter stitch and all rectangles. It was simple, but it was so long. So yeah. Don't recommend. I'm recommending these right here. Okay, so to round it out, how can we find you? I mentioned your website. We're going to put it down in the show notes. Where else do you want people to look for you? YouTube, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I just heard that.
Yeah,
yes.
I just started investing more time in YouTube, so you can find me on YouTube underneath Knitatude. Probably the most active place that you will find me is going to be on Instagram, which is instagram.com/Knitatude, KNITATUDE. It's knitting with attitude, just because I have a tendency to swear on the bench, which I've only sworn once a year, so good job, Chantal. But you can find me on like TikTok and on Facebook. But the places that you'll most often see me is going to be through Instagram. I do
Instagram and the new YouTube. I'll be putting all of those in the show notes so people can go and check it out. If they don't know you yet, everyone's going to be like, no, we already know where to find her.
No.
No, I hope there is a ton of people on here who are like, who is this? I need to find out more.
Otherwise,
and I need to get the book.
I know who that is. I think I've seen her in like a wedding dress in the mountains with a sweater scarf.
With the sweater scarf on. That's like the signature shot right there, which I love it. I love it so much. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us a little peek behind the curtains of your business and your craft and why you're doing it, which I find the best reasons. And also the book. And all the best to you for the launch of the book.
Thank you.
And we'll see you around on Instagram and on YouTube.
Yeah, come say hi.
Thanks again. Thank you so much for being here. Bye. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best.